All right, what's up, everybody? Welcome to the show. This is the Fantasy Football Fanatics podcast, the official podcast of the fantasyfootballfanatics.com. It is Tuesday, March 19th. Welcome to the show. I'm your host, Griffin, joined by Jason Cabrera. Jason, what's up, buddy?
Not a whole lot, man. How you doing?
I'm doing well. Welcome to Twitch. Welcome to a new platform. This is our
It's my first time.
first time. Will do. It's first time for you, second time for us as a show on the platform, and we're having fun with it. So as always, we are the Fantasy Football Fanatics podcast. Yep, got it. We are here to a year-round show every Tuesday. I've only said it 299 episodes worth of times. Yeah, almost episode 300 for us. But yeah, today we're going to be talking about the free agent frenzy continued, specifically the free agent impact. So we kind of touched on where the guys went. CJ and I on last week's show, we talked about where everybody landed, our initial hot takes. But now we're going to talk a little bit about what we think the implications will be for that player, for their fantasy stock, what to expect from them this season, the impacts on the rest of the team. We're going to be talking about that. So we're going to be doing part one today. So we're going to talk about specifically the quarterbacks and the running backs. We'll move to wide receivers and tight ends on Friday's show. As always, make sure you guys follow us wherever you're listening. We're a year-round show every Tuesday and Friday, bringing you everything you need to win your fantasy leagues. We are on the Apple Podcast app, aka the former iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, Podcast Addict. We are on YouTube, on Twitter at the FF Fanatics, so 3 Fs at the FF Fanatics, or you can support the show at Patreon at patreon.com/the Fantasy Football Fanatics and get yourselves a bunch of bonus perks all the time. So without it being said, let's get right to it. No real warm up today. We're just going to dive right in. We have some top headlines to get to, which includes a bunch more free agent signings, a lot of rumors and reports of people visiting teams, because obviously the initial rush it's already over. That's fast and furious. It's the first couple of days. People are signed for crazy contracts, and now the bargain shopping begins. People start coming down in price. People start getting released. Trades start happening. Moves that really are a lot more finesse start to take place, and you hear about people that are reporting certain places or are going in to meet with the team and do workouts, and we're going to see kind of if they were to sign there, what our thoughts would be if we like the fit, things of that nature. So we're going to dive into some of that, and then we're going to get into the impact of what has already happened. Not just the free agency signings, but the new league year trades. So we'll get to that. Let's start, as we always do, at the quarterback position, and some big news. The one that I guess I'm not surprised about, but I was not expecting this specific move to happen. The Miami Dolphins have traded starting quarterback for their team, Ryan Tannehill, to the Tennessee Titans. So he will now be backing up Marcus Mariota in Tennessee. So it's interesting. But of course, Marcus Mariota, we talked about this a bit after the show, because we stuck around. CJ and I, we answered a bunch of questions for people in the chat on Twitch, and we were talking about the whole AFC South and our thought process. We talked about how Marcus Mariota, in his years now in the league, 4 years under his belt, has never played a full season. Now they have Ryan Tannehill, which could be the best backup in the league. I mean, he's been a starter for a number of years, not the highest caliber guy, but for a backup, he's definitely upper echelon. So he gets traded to the Tennessee Titans. They also throw in a 6th-round pick for this year's draft, and the Titans in turn send the Miami Dolphins their 4th-round pick in 2020 and their 7th-round pick in 2021. So not a ton of value for a what was building to be a franchise quarterback, and no value even this season. It's all they're mortgaging middle to late picks in future years drafts. So Jason, what's your initial thought process? What's your gut reaction to Ryan Tannehill not only being a starter but traded for pennies to the Tennessee Titans?
The disrespect, the absolute disrespect for Ryan Tannehill. I mean, I get it. The guy's been hurt a lot. I mean, he was their franchise quarterback. He was the guy that was supposed to come in and be the guy. So the fact that they sent him, not the fact that they traded him. I get that they traded him. Okay, I understand it was time to move on. It was time to find someone that was maybe a little more solid, somebody that could be their franchise guy. But trading him for a 6th this year and a 7th, or rather, excuse me, a 4th and a 7th.
Yeah,
that's ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous for a guy who's a starting quarterback. The guy's a starter. Okay. Now, sitting behind Ryan Tannehill, or behind Mariota, he's probably going to start at some point during this year. So we know that they're going to get their amount out of him, their value out of him in Tennessee. So for Tennessee, this is fantastic. I mean, they got a starting caliber backup who they know they're probably going to use given Mariota's background for peanuts. So my question is not with Tennessee. Tennessee, I think, brilliant move, smart. They got somebody they can really count on. My question is for Miami. What in the world is Miami doing? Now they have no quarterback.
No quarterback.
And going forward, we have no clue what's going to happen. Obviously, they're going to try. They tried to get Bridgewater. That didn't work out. He ended up going over to New Orleans.
Yep.
He resigned. And there's other quarterbacks out there. But now who are they going to go after? I mean, are they going to bring in Tyrod Taylor? Are they going to try to make him a starter again? Are they going to try to do, I don't know, Kaepernick's out there? I have no idea what these guys are going to do. There's been rumors that they're going to talk to the Arizona Cardinals about trying to bring in Josh Rosen if the Cardinals are serious about trading him.
Yep.
Personally, I don't think they are, but I mean that would be a good option for them, or trading up to that number 1 pick and trying to pick up a quarterback at the top of the draft. But that doesn't seem feasible to me, not with what they've got. So I just don't understand this by Miami.
No, and of course, other bit of the news, they've gone out and they've signed unrestricted free agent quarterback Ryan Fitzpatrick, who could be a starter for them. He'll now be starting for his 3rd AFC East team in his long career. Marcus Mariota. Ryan Fitzpatrick, he's been in the league for 15 seasons? 150 years. Yeah, with the then St. Louis Rams. He was with the Bengals, the Bills, Titans, Texans for a year, Jets, Buccaneers most recently. Yeah. Now he's with the Dolphins. The true journeyman.
Started with a mustache. He started with a mustache.
And now he's got his Gandalf beard. But I mean, I don't think they can rely on him to be their full-time starter. I mean, Ryan Fitzpatrick, he is since 2012 when he was with the Bills. He's only had one other season in that stretch where he's played a full 16 games, whether that be injury, being benched, whatever the case may be. So I don't think they can expect him to be the full-time starter. Now, like you said, and like I also was speculating, do they go out and they try and add quality depth with good backups in this league? Good unsigned agents so far like Tyrod Taylor, Colin Kaepernick. Do they make a trade? Josh Rosen, a common thought process, which CJ and I talked about this in great depth on Friday's show, could be the best bargain out there. A former first-round guy, a guy that if you take away the fact that he had the world against him in Arizona last season, sorry Jason, but there's no offensive line, no help, everybody got hurt. The only thing that was working for him in Arizona was the defense. He looked good if you take all that into consideration, and we think he's got some serious potential in this league. But of course, the Cardinals drafting number 1 overall, what they're going to do kind of remains up in the air. A lot of people are linking them to getting Kyler Murray. I don't think that the Dolphins have the ammunition to move all the way up to the number 1 spot to grab him. So my thought process is, do they trade for Rosen, or do they try and trade up to maybe the 4th, 5th, 6th spot and try and get their hands on Dwayne Haskins. Yeah, that's the name. I spaced for a second there. So okay. I mean, go ahead.
The other option that is out there that is a possibility that is actually within reach. Yeah. It's a little bit more of a long shot, but it is somebody that has been linked to them a couple times, and that's Drew Lock.
Yeah,
Drew Lock's actually a pretty good quarterback. He's not again in last year's draft. Drew Lock would have been like a 3rd round, 4th round quarterback. In this year's draft, because of the slim pickings at the quarterback position, he's actually a pretty good option. But again, taking him in the 1st round is a bargain. Is not a bargain. It's a long shot with Drew Lock. So
right.
That could be what they're thinking. Hey, we'll reach up, we'll grab Drew Lock. He's a solid quarterback. The problem is what they're going to do is they're going to Tannehill themselves again. They're going to get a guy that is not necessarily going to be a franchise quarterback. They're going to try to pigeonhole him into being their franchise quarterback. That's what they did with Ryan Tannehill, and that's why it didn't work out.
Yeah, I mean, the thing for me is with the way things are going now, if Rosen gets traded, that dilutes an already very thin need at quarterback right now. So, like, Locke, I don't even have as a 1st rounder this year. But I mean,
I don't either.
It's possible, but I mean, this is a defensive heavy draft. But I only see Haskins and Murray going as 1st round picks. So I think that if they were to take him in the 1st round, they would be reaching. I don't think they need to. I think they either try to get move up in the draft and get Haskins, or maybe he falls to them, but I doubt that because someone's going to want to load up. I just don't know how it's going to play out. But the Dolphins aren't done. I can tell you that much right now because they're not going into the season with Ryan Fitzpatrick, Jake Rudock, I think is under contract. Luke Falk, I think is another name that there's still in the house.
Falk, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I could see Luke Falk being somebody that they tried to lean on a little bit and try to see if they could push him into that starting position. Because when they drafted him, that was the thought, is that he would be the heir apparent and he would end up being that guy in Miami. But I don't know. It's too much of a question mark. Maybe they're thinking, hey, Ryan Fitzpatrick has been there. He can do it. And then Falk will kind of step in. Maybe that's what they're thinking, that Fitzpatrick's going to be that bridge quarterback. But it doesn't wash. Fitzpatrick is not a bridge quarterback. He is a backup quarterback at best.
Yeah, I mean, he's had great years, which have earned him some decent-sized contracts in the past. And maybe he gets that Fitz magic back. Who knows? Devontae Parker needs to have a season like what we've expected for years. Kenny Stills has to play out his mind. Behind that, they really don't have anything in house, so it's not like he's got the weapons to really do it with in Miami. And I don't think that they're mortgaging the future on Ryan Fitzpatrick, a guy who is 36. I think he's going to be 37 this season. So yeah, they're not they're not going to be done there. They're going to go out. They're going to bring somebody else in. Maybe they'll go through multiple avenues. Maybe they'll bring another free agent guy. Maybe they will trade. Maybe they'll draft a rookie.
I have a wild card for you. You ready?
Okay.
What if they go out and they trade for Taysom Hill out of New Orleans?
I don't know if that's a solution for them though.
I don't think it is either, but we're talking about the Miami Dolphins here, okay? They're not good at this as far as picking quarterbacks and going, this is going to be great. Taysom Hill has shown a lot of ability. I think he's more of just an athlete than a quarterback, but it might be something where they're trying to reach and do something like that. I've heard rumblings about this. I thought it was interesting when I first heard about it, and it seems like something this Miami team might try to do. So I don't know. I just thought I'd throw it out there.
Do you see Hill or Bridgewater as the backup to Drew Brees though in New Orleans? Like, because that'll yeah, so do I. So I mean, maybe they could get Hill for like pennies on the dollar because it's
That's
not
what I'm
a lot.
He's gonna be cheap.
I don't know. It's gonna be interesting. I don't think that that's something that if that happens, I'm not excited for fantasy. Obviously, I don't think that's a long-term solution. It would be, I think, a move for move's sakes. I think it's completely lateral, but maybe we'll see what happens. But let's keep moving.
Yeah.
The Los Angeles Rams reportedly are signing unrestricted free agent quarterback Blake Bortles to be their backup to starting quarterback Jared Goff this season. So as of this recording, it has not officially happened, but it sounds like it's a done deal. So what are your thoughts on this? Blake Bortles, a guy who has shown flashes in this league, but obviously nothing consistent. I mean, then played himself out of the starting job in Jacksonville, going to Sean McVay, the Rams, all the weapons in the world, a good running game, a good defense, a Super Bowl caliber team, though they laid an egg in the Super Bowl. What are your thoughts on Blake Bortles potentially starting should Jared Goff go down? What are your thoughts, real life and potentially for fantasy?
This is a great move. This is a great move by the Rams. They went out and they're being very smart recently. This is one of the things that I've liked the most about the Sean McVay era. With the Los Angeles Rams. As much as I hate to say this as a Cardinals fan, I think they're one of the smartest teams in the league right now. They're doing a lot of smart things, bringing in talent when it's peaking and that kind of thing. Blake Bortles is a bust as a starting quarterback. He's been a bust. He just has not gotten to where we needed him to be. He's put up good fantasy numbers, mostly in garbage time and things like that. Jared Goff is clearly rising in fantasy circles. He's got a fantastic offense to throw to. He's a very good quarterback, good head on his shoulders. Blake Bortles is somebody with a lot of real-world experience. I mean, he's been a starter now, and he's been there, and he's done that. So this is a great move by the Rams. They bring this guy in. If Goff happens to go down, you got a guy that's been there that can do it, and he's got probably the best offense that he's ever had in Los Angeles. As far as fantasy-wise, I think that it's a reach. I mean, Goff is clearly the guy. He's the guy with the talent. He's the guy that knows how to run this offense. If Goff goes down, I'm going to look elsewhere. I'm probably not going to look to Blake Bortles, even though he's got this amazing offense to run. Fantasy-wise, I think they'll rely more on Gurley and less on the passing game if Blake Bortles ends up being the guy.
I mean, I completely agree. But he's got a good offensive line, good passing game, running game, defense, everything. I mean, Sean McVay, great offensive-minded coach. I mean, we saw the difference between 2016 Jared Goff to 2017 going to McVay, where he went from 1,000 yards and 5 touchdowns and 7 starts to 15 starts. 4,000 yards, 28 touchdowns. Great job, Sean McVay, great offensive coordinator. And then really he increased a lot of his averages even last year, and the offense took yet another step forward. And so, I mean, maybe we get back to the magic of the 2015 season with Blake Bortles, where he threw 600 plus times, over 4,000, almost 4,500 yards. It was 4,400 and change, 35 touchdowns. That magic that he never quite reclaimed. I mean, he'll have the surrounding talent to be that caliber of guy, but you have to imagine the entire offense takes a step backwards, and you have to imagine that they'll obviously, like you said, they'll load up against against the run game. We don't know what the run game's exactly going to be yet. Obviously, Gurley, we know that we're talking about they want to lessen his workload. They want to have somebody that can be a change of pace. So I mean, for fantasy, that's scary because he's one of those few remaining true workhorse backs for fantasy in the league. So we don't know what's going to be there, but you have to imagine that if Goff goes down, Bortles comes in, defense is going to suck up. They're going to try and take Gurley away as best they can. They're going to make Blake Bortles beat them through the air. Maybe there ends up being some magic because he's got some good talent surrounding him, but he's not a guy I'm going out and probably mortgaging my future on. I'm not burning a ton of fab on. I'm not burning super high end waiver priority on, depending on my league's format. I don't know. It'll be interesting, but it's something to take into account. He's got probably the best surrounding talent and best offensive coordinator he's ever worked with now. So maybe they figure out what works good for Blake. They help develop him, and maybe if Goff goes down, which Goff's only played 1 full season in his 3 years in the league, maybe viable streaming option.
Risk mitigation.
Yeah.
Risk mitigation, though, I wouldn't.
I mean, I'm not drafting him. Nobody should draft a backup quarterback to begin with. So, What I'm talking about in the case Goff goes down, Blake Bortles as a viable streaming option, sure. I wouldn't be afraid of him, but I'm not mortgaging the future to get him. He's not a set him and forget him type guy like Jared Goff is kind of on the fringe of, is what I'm trying to say. Let's move on to Baltimore, where the Ravens are reportedly still hoping to re-sign unrestricted free agent quarterback RG3, Robert Griffin III. This just makes too much sense not to happen. If they're not going to bring like Tyrod Taylor back into the house, he's been gone for a couple of years. RG3 is a logical choice, knows the system, obviously a mobile quarterback, a better passing quarterback than Lamar Jackson at this point in his career too. But both of them very highly mobile guys. They can run the read option. That's obviously what Baltimore's going towards. As much as I'm a Ravens fan, I do not like that approach that we've seen time and time again, that's not a long-term solution, but, you got to be able to move the ball through the air in this league. But it makes too much sense not to bring RG3 back, so I think this happens. I think it comes down to the amount, and I'm sure we'll have more information about this hopefully in the coming days. I don't think this is going to take long to resolve. No real fantasy implications here. If Lamar Jackson goes down, RG3 comes in. I think he's a viable continuation on that. If anything, I think it helps the wide receivers if RG3 comes in, because RG3 is not afraid to at least take shots downfield. Now, his accuracy, that's up for debate. I don't know. It's something just worth monitoring. It's a logical fit. I mean, he fits the same mold, unlike Joe Flacco, Lamar Jackson, completely opposite style quarterbacks. So it makes sense. Let's go to the running back position, where the Cleveland Browns running back Kareem Hunt, the suspension has officially come down. He's going to be suspended for 8 games for the violation of the league's personal conduct policy. A lot of people were anticipating this to be longer. A lot of people are looking this to be probably about 10 games because the baseline for the infractions of which he did, which was the whole domestic abuse kind of fringe area, because he was found in the video kicking a woman at a hotel, yada yada yada, on video. That the domestic abuse kind of whole thing that starts at 6 games. So 8 games is like a infringement of the policy, but a lot of people thought it was going to be 10 because he lied about it. So it ended up coming to 8, somewhere in the middle. A lot of people land on either side of the fence with this one. Some people think it was too little. Some people think it's too long because it's technically technically his first offense. Regardless, we now know the length that he's going to be gone. So my question for you, Jason, and CJ and I talked about this on Friday's show. None of us, unless we're in deeper leagues or whatever the case may be, unless we think that we have solid depth and we want to actually have a guy ride our bench and then have to work his way into the rotation, are really investing draft capital in this guy. But what do you think how does this affect Nick Chubb more than anything in his draft value?
I don't think it affects Nick Chubb at all. I mean, you're talking half a season where you're not going to have this guy, Kareem Hunt. I think it affects his. Okay, if it affects him at all, it's because people are thinking very far ahead. And like you said, people are like, oh, I'm going to grab this guy and have him ride my bench. That's a wonderful idea, except that you need to fill your bench with people that are going to play right now, because half the season, 8 games, that may sink your fantasy season.
Yep.
You know, if you don't have enough running, especially at the running back position, if you don't have enough depth at running back, and you're not able to interchange and use some guys that are good, that are available at least, you're done. Your whole season's over. So, yeah, I don't see this from a fantasy standpoint, at least for me anyway. I don't see this affecting my view on Nick Chubb at all. I think Chubb's going to be great, and I'm going out and grabbing him.
See, for me, it's scary because it's not as much of a suspension as we thought, and so he'll be back sooner. He'll be able to start working with the team, and come the playoff push. Kareem Hunt is a phenomenal talent in this league. There's no dispute. No matter what you feel about him on a personal level, which I don't think any of us necessarily sympathize with what he did, but a lot of people are saying he was going to get a second chance in this league. The signing doesn't make a lot of sense because they have Nick Chubb, which is a 3-down back, a young guy who's very talented. We saw him finally get the opportunity, a couple games in the season last year, and literally run with it. They bring in Kareem Hunt, who is the same kind of talent. It's not like it's a 1-2 punch as far as different things that they do well. They're both really good runners. One's maybe more north-south, while the other one's a little bit more lateral. They're both pass catchers. They're going to cannibalize each other. I don't think either one of these are going to have great value come the end of the season. I think if you invest, because right now Nick Chubb's going as the 9th running back off the board with the 3rd pick in the 2nd round. That's really early for a guy you're getting half a season out of before he's going to nosedive, because they're going to start working Kareem Hunt in, whether that be for the potential trade or whether that be for the future. Who really knows how this is going to play out? But it's still, you're burning a early 2nd round pick on a guy you're getting half a season of solid production out of, and then big question marks. So I guess the real question is, do you draft Nick Chubb knowing that after he shows a couple really good games, you just try to move him for maybe a lateral motion, maybe somebody who's underperforming, or do you ride it out and do you try and get the handcuff with Kareem Hunt? Maybe Nick Chubb gets hurt. If that's the case, then Kareem Hunt is an obvious guy, a must-add type guy. But what are your thoughts on how to approach this season?
Well, the handcuff idea is an interesting idea. If you go out and you get Nick Chubb and you get him early, let's say you get him in the 2nd round, okay, and that would make people like Griffin, suck in through his teeth when you do that. He does it whenever I draft. Anyway, yeah. If that happens, and you go, you know what, I'm also going to grab Kareem Hunt as the handcuff. That makes sense. If you can get both of those two guys, that makes a lot of sense, especially as high-powered as this offense looks like it might end up being this year. If they live up to their potential, that could make a lot of sense. That could work out pretty well. If you don't end up getting both of these guys, you got one or the other, then you're basically praying. You're hoping that the first 8 games that Nick Chubb is great, and then he stays viable after Kareem Hunt comes in, because then, as long as you got good depth, you can start interchanging and streaming and doing those kinds of things. But like you said, once Kareem Hunt comes in after those first 8 games, and now we've got both Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt, they're going to cannibalize each other. It's going to be a problem. And my question is going to be, who do they go with? Let's say that they go for 8 games, and Nick Chubb is killing it. He's 5 yards a carry, and he's just killing it. Do they take him out and put in Kareem Hunt? With Nick Chubb just tearing it up? They could, you don't know, because maybe they're thinking, oh, we're going to spell him a little bit more. We're going to use both of these guys. We'll have a 2-headed attack. That's a wonderful thing in the NFL now. They love to do these 2-headed attacks. For fantasy, it's a killer.
Yeah, Kareem Hunt obviously has a lot longer of a track record of being a pass-catching back, but we saw that Nick Chubb could do it. They didn't use him very much in that fashion, but maybe it's a change of pace. But they're both really that elite guy, and the problem is, I think that if you draft Nick Chubb you are stuck investing a mid-round pick, lower mid-round probably, hopefully, ideally, on Kareem Hunt, because you got to have the handcuff. And should something happen to Chubb, Kareem Hunt is an obvious must-add, like we said, despite the suspension, despite the fact he's going to have to work in. Hopefully he'll spend all that time learning the offense, but we've seen he's one of those kind of generational type talents. I mean, he's unbelievably good, catching the ball, running the ball, getting a lot of touchdowns. I mean, he finished as a top RB1 in a number of formats, despite the fact he only played 11 games last season. So, I mean, it's really... It's a tough situation. So it pushes Chubb down in my draft board and my rankings, because I know that the investment is not just a second rounder, but probably an 8th rounder, 9th rounder in Kareem Hunt. And that's a guy who's going to ride my bench, take up a bench spot, which affects my ability to have depth, make roster moves, do bye weeks, injuries, or whatever the case may be, if my league format does not allow me to put him into a reserve spot, if my league even has a reserve spot. So, because every website operates that spot differently on how you can use it. Some websites, if they're not in the game, if they're just inactive that week, you can put them in a reserve spot. Other ones, if they're not like suspended or if they're on injured reserve, everyone's different, you can't put them there. So it becomes a headache. Know your league format, know your league's rules, and assess accordingly, because you are really putting an investment into a guy who is probably going to be, either one of these guys, a running back one if given the full workload easily. Together, it's going to be interesting. But I mean, an offense that we ranted and raved about, and I have made the bold prediction, that they're going to be possibly and probably, I know they're favored to be right now, the winners of the AFC North this year. Went from 0-16 to probably winning the division. I mean, Odell Beckham Jr., Jarvis Landry, David Njoku, Kareem Hunt, Nick Chubb, obviously Baker Mayfield, huge season for him. I not so boldly, I think in my opinion, said I'm putting him in my top 6 quarterback rankings this year. So it's going to be a lot. Like I saw jokes on Twitter talking about how you can't even draft this fantasy team, and here it is in like one NFL team. So it's a lot of layers of what could be, and unfortunately, here we are, March 19th. We just don't know how it's going to play out when he gets out of his suspension in like November. So you gotta prepare for all possibilities, and that unfortunately means you're going to have to invest draft capital in Kareem Hunt if you draft Nick Chubb. If you sneak Kareem Hunt, he's going to be riding your bench, and then you're going to hope that he works in. Something happens to Chubb so you can use him. It's a tough situation, and maybe you just let someone else navigate those waters and you go with a more sure thing. That's probably what I'm going to be looking to do. But, to each their own. I mean, obviously, we know if Chubb goes down, Hunt's going to be a must-add, amazing player. We'll see how it all works out. Sorry to any Duke Johnson truthers out there. Sorry. It's just not going to happen. Yeah. So let's move on. Unrestricted free agent running back Jay Ajayi reportedly visiting the Indianapolis Colts on Wednesday. So, Jason, I ask you, what do you think that fit would be like, assuming Jay Ajayi comes back and he's the player that we all think he could be, should be, and possibly would be with the Colts, because that's a great situation. I mean, it's not like he has a lot to beat out, just Marlon Mack and Naheem Hines there, and probably has the skill set to do it. So what are your thoughts?
Yeah, as soon as he steps through the door, he's the best running back on their roster. I mean, he really is. Even if he's not exactly where he was or where we expected him to be, he's still going to be better than the other two options that are there. I like Naheem Hines. I really do. I think he's a good young running back. He's going to be very, very good. But Ajayi can do it all, and that's the thing, is that he fits the idea of what this Colts offense is trying to do. They're trying to become more versatile. They're trying to become more explosive. And I think that Ajayi does fit that mold very, very well. And I think you put him behind that offensive line that they're building up with that quarterback, and he could be very explosive. He could actually kind of rewire his career in this way.
I mean, he absolutely could. I mean, yeah, I agree. He steps in. He's probably, provided he comes back from injury healthy, he's probably the week 1 starter, and he comes into a good situation. Obviously, we know they have Andrew Luck, top quarterback in this league, top 3 for fantasy, at least in my initial rankings. And, with that, they can't stack the box, because there's T.Y. Hilton, who's, despite what you think of him, his size or whatever the case, he is a very talented receiver, true number 1 in this league, very productive. And they went in and bring in big body receiver Devin Funchess, who has been really gaining traction the last couple of years in Carolina, where they're not really known for throwing the ball very much. So he definitely upgrade for Funches, and we'll talk about that more on Friday's show. But there's a serious passing game there now. Obviously, Eric Ebron, big target in the red zone. All these things mean that they can't stack the box against Jay Ajayi, who we know can do north-south, very good laterally, can catch the ball. He can really kind of do it all. It's just injuries, obviously, and it's ironic he has a knee injury with his degenerative knee problem, which is what has affected his stock in the league since he was drafted. But I think that he's going to be a viable pick. And so my question to you now, Jason, is if he signs with the Colts, where are you taking him in your drafts? What round do you think he's going to be worth?
Probably second round. I'm guessing he's going to be probably back of the second round, maybe mid-second round, depending on what happens going forward with these other teams.
See, I kind of have him pegged for probably mid-third because people are going to be worried about, the new system, the injuries, all of that. Obviously, we think he'll be the number one guy, but I'm sure they'll work in Marlon Mack, who they like there, Naheem Hines. So I think he'll probably be a third rounder, but that's still a lot of value for a guy who, it's a lot of question marks. And we always see the new faces in new places. It doesn't always work out. I think this is a system that would really work for him, though. Don't get me wrong. But, so to put into perspective, guys going in the middle of the third round, Aaron Jones, Darius Geis, Philip Lindsay, and then, ironically, Marlon Mack at the end of the third. So...
that's why I'm thinking Jay Ajayi probably ends up before all those guys.
He's before all of them.
Pretty much all of them. The only one I think I think talent-wise that should be above him might be Darius Geis, just because I'm a big Darius Geis fan. But the situation he's in is not exactly the best situation.
Right, re-signing Adrian Peterson, yeah.
Exactly. Whereas Jay Ajayi coming in, as we said, will be the day one starter, and he'll be the guy that they'll probably go to most of the time. He's a three-down back. This is a guy who can do it all. Also, you have to remember that from our perspective, and you saw this last year, the top of the draft is packed with running backs. It is packed. I mean, we're talking about David Johnson and Barkley and Gurley and all these guys. They're going to be packing those top two rounds. So Jay Ajayi in the middle of second round, that actually probably isn't that far-fetched given the fact that there's just so much talent at the running back position in the top two rounds.
You're saying middle second round or middle third round?
I said middle of the second or late second for Jay Ajayi.
So to put the whole rundown, middle of the second, you're seeing Joe Mixon, David Johnson, Dalvin Cook. I would probably take all of those guys ahead of him, honestly. Leonard Fournette, early third. Aaron Jones, Darius Geis, Philip Lindsay. I would probably slide him in between Aaron Jones and Darius Geis. Aaron Jones, it's a committee, but I'm expecting that Jay Ajayi will be used kind of lightly. But Darius Geis, Adrian Peterson being there. Middle of the third at this point.
Oh, middle of the third.
Yeah, because so Aaron Jones currently going with the 8th pick in the third round, so I could see Jay Ajayi sliding in somewhere around there. And then again, Marlon Mack right now, who's slated to be the number one, going with the 11th pick in the third round, 17th running back off the board. So RB2, which is what I'm expecting out of Jay Ajayi, honestly. I think he's a flex guy with RB2 upside, unless everybody else kind of behind him goes down, and then he's definitely a running back too with upside. So we'll see. Let's move on though. The Minnesota Vikings have re-signed running back Amir Abdullah, so that's depth. Obviously Amir Abdullah, he a guy who we all know his name from being with the Lions, was with the Vikings last year. Mostly was a depth piece. He mostly was used on special teams. I expect that to be the case going forward. Do you see that going any differently, Jason?
No, absolutely not. Not unless everybody goes down.
Yeah, I mean, look, Dalvin Cook's going to come back. He's another year removed from his knee injury. I know he burned a lot of people last season, but I think we're going to see in 2019 the Dalvin Cook we saw pre-injury 2017. Amir Abdullah, honestly, though, he could come in and be that number 2 guy. And we've seen, obviously with in his early days in Detroit, really flashes of talent. So I think he's a good signing, a good depth piece for them to have, but he's not a guy I'm going out and signing in fantasy. I don't expect him to come in and immediately be kind of sharing touches with like Latavius Murray was with Dalvin Cook. So I think they're too similar for it to be really any sort of change of pace. So yeah, expect it to be a depth piece. If you are a Dalvin Cook owner, maybe you grab Amir Abdullah late in your drafts as a bench backup kind of guy, but I don't see Michael Boone being over Amir Abdullah, honestly. That's just me. Let's move on. Also, unrestricted free agent running back Spencer Ware, formerly of the Kansas City Chiefs, is currently visiting with the Detroit Lions. So that would be an interesting fit as well for a team that also has a lot of depth already at the position. Obviously, we Kerryon Johnson, a guy we were all very high on last year. Obviously, for a lot of reasons, didn't end up really working out. LeGarrette Blount, I believe, is still unsigned as of now. Zach Zenner there. Theo Riddick. They've got a lot of guys already, so this is not necessarily a move I'm excited about. He'd probably come in and be their number 2 guy right away. Probably push Kerryon Johnson, I would imagine, but I would expect Kerryon Johnson to win the job. They have more invested in him, 2nd-round pick last year, and he's also, I think, a more universally talented back. We just need him to develop a little bit more. So, interesting, possibly a handcuff. Might not even happen because as of now he hasn't signed. Let's move on. Wide receiver position. Kansas City Chiefs wide receiver Tyreek Hill is currently under investigation for battery. So I don't know what's going on in Kansas City. Kareem Hunt, now Tyreek Hill. And Tyreek Hill, obviously in the midst of, we're hearing all this talk about how they're going to set a record-breaking contract for him. Possibly not anymore. Jason, what are your thoughts on this situation?
My thoughts are that the brass in Kansas City is probably going, this sucks, but at the same time, kind of a good thing for us. We don't have to pay him as much to keep him on the staff. Hopefully it's not. I mean, it's investigation, so we don't know what's going on. Hopefully it's not true. Hopefully it's unfounded and nothing happened, and we can just continue moving forward. This is one of my favorite players in the league right now. Just very explosive. He does everything. He's a linchpin in that offense. If it's true, I mean, we're going to see the same kind of thing that we saw. He may not even be with the Chiefs anymore. He may have sunk his career. You know what I mean? I don't know. Clearly, Kareem Hunt did not sink his career. He's back with an NFL team. So who knows what's going to happen right now? The NFL is really hard to judge with all this kind of stuff. As far as his fantasy, yeah, he's strictly hands off until we know what's going on with that investigation.
I mean, it's more or less the exact same, well, not the exact same situation, obviously, but it's a pretty similar situation. What happened with Kareem Hunt, they cut him right away, but also, Hunt lied about it, video came out. It's really, and we talk about this every time it happens. It's getting so old talking about stuff like this happening. We want to focus on fantasy, we want to focus on the players, what could be, but this is the news, and this is a guy who's going as a first rounder in most fantasy drafts right now at the wide receiver position, one of the top 3 wide receivers in the league for fantasy, and a guy who we don't know his future with the team. Is he going to face legal repercussions, which will cost him time? Will he then go against the NFL player personal conduct policy and miss more time? Is he going to be cut from the team entirely because they're going to, they're going to have to save face a lot. That happens more times than not. What's going to happen? And we just don't know. If you're drafting now, if you're in like a dynasty league or a startup or something like that, or you're in a crazy league that just is a redraft league that wants to start their draft as early as possible, and you're drafting this week or something crazy, you don't know. So it's really. I'm tired of talking about these type of news things, but we have to. It's the job. But I mean, we just don't know is the bottom line what the repercussions are. He's under investigation for 2. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I was going to say it's going to depend on how he reacts to it too. I mean, there's like you said with Kareem Hunt. Part of it was because he lied about it and he had to defend himself and all this kind of stuff. If Tyreek Hill is guilty, comes out and says, "I'm sorry, I'm going to go to counseling. I'm going to take care of this," and he acts in a specific way, then it's a possibility that's going to be a slap on the wrist. He's going to get a suspension. He's going to go to counseling, and then he'll be back.
Yeah. Of course, if you don't know the specifics, I'm not going to go into it too much. It's a report of battery and potential child abuse / neglect, and it's a whole thing. So yeah, that's what's going on with Tyreek Hill right now. We'll leave it there. We don't know what the repercussions are because this is pretty breaking news as of like a couple days ago. Nothing's come down from the league or legally. There's going to be obviously all that has to play out first. So as of now, hopefully you're not drafting. We'll let you know when we know more. We will move on. The Oakland Raiders have signed unrestricted free agent wide receiver J.J. Nelson, former Arizona Cardinal. Jason, what are your thoughts on this move? Adding more depth to a wide receiver core that's trying to give options to Derek Carr. Obviously bringing in Antonio Brown.
Well, this is a heck of an option. This guy is super, super fast. I mean, he's one of the fastest guys in the league right now. He's a smaller wide receiver, but the speed kind of makes up for that. The only problem that we had with him in Arizona was every now and then consistent with drops. He'd drop the ball, and that's not what you want with your burner.
No.
When you send your burner down, you don't want him dropping the ball in the end zone, which happened multiple times and is the most maddening thing in the world.
Yeah.
But as we said, he can, as long as he starts catching the ball, he can stretch out that defense rather, and take the top off. And he is an absolute burner. If they can work him into that offense and use him better than we used him last year with our vanilla offense, then I think Oakland's got themselves a nice weapon.
that super vanilla Arizona Cardinals offense.
It was so bad. I just want to cry every time I watch the replays. It was just I'm like, we got David Johnson, and this is what our offense looks like.
Tell me how you really feel about that Mike McCoy offense.
I hate me some Mike McCoy.
I mean, to be fair, and to anyone who's new and listening, he was anti that signing from when it happened. I will be the first to go out there and defend him. So
from day one, I couldn't stand that crap.
Yeah, it's bad. All right, so it's good depth. He joins a wide receiver core that includes them bringing in Antonio Brown. Obviously, we talked about that a lot on Friday's show. They brought in Tyrell Williams from the Chargers, and now he comes in. J.J. Nelson, probably the number 3, I would imagine. They wouldn't have brought him in and signed him if he wasn't going to be that. And honestly, I don't think he's going to be pushed by really anybody else on the team. Seth Roberts, Rashad Davids, Marcel Aderman, I think was his name, right? I know, some other guy. So he was a 7th rounder last year, something like that. So, yeah.
Jobber.
Yeah, jobber, to say the least. Let's move on. Let's see. Last bit of wide receiver news. Unrestricted free agent wide receiver Randall Cobb visiting with the Dallas Cowboys. Currently one of the highest, biggest names, I should say, at the wide receiver position that are still available. So, Jason, what are your thoughts on the potential landing spot of Randall Cobb, who's a guy, look, he has flashed throughout his career. We've seen very good things, but that was in Green Bay. That was generally always while someone else was there. When he got his chance to be the number 1 guy, when Jordy Nelson went down or something of that nature, never really recaptured that magic. Going to the Cowboys, which now has Amari Cooper, a definite number 1. Michael Gallup, a 3rd rounder last year, which we thought should have gone earlier in the draft, and we think has talent plus opportunity to be a decent fantasy guy. You probably get him in the double-digit rounds, but he could have a potential breakout sophomore campaign. And then Randall Cobb probably coming in and working the slot with Tavon Austin. So what are your thoughts on that, Jason?
It makes me think about Amari Cooper, because Amari Cooper had the same thing. He'd flashed, and he flashed in a different way. He was flashing number 1 ability. He was flashing, stud ability, but he wasn't getting there consistently with the Oakland Raiders. It just wasn't working out for whatever reason. Then he goes over to the Cowboys, and suddenly, boom, he's a number 1 receiver. He's looking good. The Cowboys can use him. It's great. Same thing could possibly happen here with Randall Cobb. Somebody that's flashed, someone that you're like, God, I can see his potential. It's just not consistent. I can't bank on it. Going to the Cowboys, again, maybe they get the best out of him. Maybe he goes in there and becomes 2, and who knows?
Yeah, I don't know what I expect, honestly. I mean, I think he's going to compete for the slot because he's not an outside guy. At this point in his career, he's getting up there in age, obviously injury history. I don't think he's going to be challenging for an outside role. I think he'd be happy to be in the slot. I think that's where he thrives, honestly. That's where he was used a lot last year in Green Bay. Definite downgrade at quarterback to Dak Prescott. I think it comes to, can he beat out Tavon Austin if he even signs here? I don't think they have a need for Randall Cobb with Tavon Austin under contract. Possibly a depth move, but let's not forget they also signed Allen Hurns last year, so they've got actually a pretty decent, it's a lot of kind of upper echelon jobbers, you would probably say, with some elite kind of ish guys at the top. But what would Randall Cobb really bring to them, besides more of a cap hit? This is a guy, I've always been a big Randall Cobb fan, but, the workload, the history, and what we've gotten out of him speaks for itself. So, I don't know. I would expect, unless it's a super cap-friendly deal, I don't think he ends up signing with Dallas. I don't think it's a great fit, honestly.
I think there's other teams, real life football-wise, there's other teams that can use him. There's other teams that need that depth. I mean, my Arizona Cardinals, for example, don't have a lot of depth at the receiver position at the moment. So there are a lot of teams like that have got like 1 or 2 guys that are good and then nothing behind them. So Randall Cobb could definitely be used in other teams, other situations. The Ravens, for example, could probably use another receiver. So, I mean, plenty of places to go besides Dallas.
The Ravens' number 1 receiver, Willie Snead. We'll just leave it there. Enough said.
Really?
It makes me angry. It makes me nauseous to say. We'll move on. Last bit of news before we get to our free agent fantasy impact section. Unrestricted free agent tight end Tyler Eifert. He ended up re-signing with the Cincinnati Bengals on yet another one-year deal. A guy who is unbelievably talented as far as being a really good boxing out, jump ball, red zone weapon. Cannot stay healthy, has officially missed way more games than he has played in his career. I don't think I'm investing draft capital in him at all, honestly. I mean, maybe if I'm if I'm a 2 tight end league, I'll get him. But if I'm in a single tight end league, this is a guy who you're expecting to get maybe 5 games out of. And if you get more than that, you're excited, and that's not really worth a lot of draft capital. I mean, obviously, early in the season, he'll be healthy, and then maybe you stream from there. I wouldn't invest anything more than probably a late-round flyer on the guy, or maybe he's my last pick before my last 2 rounds I go kicker defense. What say you, Jason?
The same thing. It's Jordan Reed all over again. I mean, it's the same thing. The guy's always hurt. You just know he's going to get hurt. You're just waiting on him to get hurt. Cincinnati just keeps signing this dude. It's hilarious to me, and they've actually got a couple of good players at the position behind him. You know, so fine. You know, like you said, I'm not touching him. You know, I want a tight end that's going to at least make it through half the season before he blows out whatever he's going to blow out this year.
Yeah, look, Tyler Eifert, unquestionably their number 1. CJ Uzama, sure. He's been okay in stretches. I mean, obviously a lot of stretches because Eifert goes down, but Uzama's never been anything consistent, anything really viable, unless he catches like a fluke touchdown. It's really...
He's on the field.
Yeah, at least he's on the field, that's true. But on the other hand... That's not always a good thing because, I mean, you know, if you have Tyler Eifert, he's either in and he's probably going to be a boom-bust guy. Most likely he's going to get you at least a touchdown, maybe a couple yards deal with it. But when you put in CJ Uzama, you're starting a guy with a hope and a prayer. And generally he goes out there, gets you like 2 fantasy points, and that's what you're getting. So honestly, I'd rather have Eifert than Uzama because Uzama is he's more likely going to lay me an egg than get me a good fantasy week. But you know, look, Tyler Eifert let's go his whole career. 2013, his rookie season, played 15 games. Not too bad. That was also the high point of his career. 2014, 1 game played. 2015, 13, not too bad. That was a great breakout year for them. That's when he played 13 games, had 13 touchdowns. Yes, he was on my team that year, and I was loving it. Only 600 yards, which is not great, but that's not his job. And then from that point, it's been just 8 in 2016, 2 games in 2017, 4 games in 2018, and that's been his career. So, he hasn't gotten to double-digit games since 2015, and he's only ever done it twice. So that's not good. That's not great draft capital. That's not something you're excited about. And these are all reasons why I'm not investing anything probably earlier than a 13th rounder in Tyler Eifert, despite how paper-thin the position is, because I know I'm not getting double-digit games out of him. We always say you can't predict injury, but bottom line, Tyler Eifert is a guy who I feel pretty comfortable predicting injury on because we have a 6-season sample size, and he's never done it. So we'll see what happens. Touchdown upside, but not a lot of yardage and huge injury risk. And with all that being said, let's move on to why we're all here. Our topic of the day, our free agent fantasy impact. This is part 1. So this week we're going to be doing quarterbacks. We're going to be doing running backs. Then we'll cover wide receivers, tight ends on Friday's show. And I looked back at our notes from last season when we did this. The lists were really long. There was a lot of quarterback signings. I forgot just how many quarterbacks switched teams last season, like starters. And maybe that's why there's not so many quarterback switching teams that we're talking about, like teams in need of them this year, because a lot of that was addressed last year. But a couple of names, only 2 that are really worth mentioning and debating. One we already talked about a little bit this week, but there's Nick Foles and Ryan Fitzpatrick. Nick Foles, obviously going from the Philadelphia Eagles to the Jacksonville Jaguars. So look, Nick Foles, we Super Bowl MVP. That's great and all. We've seen a lot of Super Bowl MVPs that go on to do nothing in this league from there. it's just the reality of it. I mean, look at Joe Flacco. Joe Flacco is not even with the same team he won the Super Bowl for anymore. And you never see franchise guys switch teams like that, at least not consistently. It's pretty unheard of in this day and age. And they got rid of him. They didn't want him anymore. So Nick Foles comes in, and we've seen him be very good at spurts, but he's also played in a number of different teams with a number of different formats and a lot of coaching systems throughout his time. He's bounced around the league a little bit. He's had a plethora of coaches. He now goes to Jacksonville, where he doesn't have, I think, a bona fide number one receiver, but we expect Foles to be an upgrade over Blake Bortles. He's got a running game, he's got a defense, this is an offense, and a team that we expected to be a playoff contender last season. Obviously, they got derailed pretty early, and a lot of that was probably Leonard Fournette going down and Blake Bortles' play. So, Nick Foles comes in. What are our thoughts on Nick Foles for fantasy this year? How does he impact the players around him? What are your thoughts on the Jags this season?
Well, I mean, Nick Foles is a guy that holds a record in this league. Okay, 7 touchdowns in a game. I mean, that's crazy. The guy can throw the football. Okay, the guy can throw the football. We've seen it. We've seen him. He's clutch. He's won a Super Bowl. I mean, he is a very, very good quarterback. Now, new face, new place.
Exactly.
So, and like you said, he doesn't have a lot of great talent at the wide receiver position right now on that team. They got a good defense, okay, and they've got some good pieces. They got a good running game, that kind of stuff. But he's new, okay. So for this season, I would definitely steer clear. Not necessarily steer clear, but I would wait on Nick Foles until the later rounds. I think he's going to be fine. I think that as the year goes on, his numbers will pick up and he'll get better. But at the moment, I would definitely steer clear because new face, new place. I mean, we saw it with Kirk Cousins when he went to Minnesota. Great quarterback, went to a new team, and actually he had a lot of talent around him when he went to that new team. Really good receivers, stuff like that. Still did not deliver where we wanted him to deliver. So same thing with Nick Foles, going to a new team, just kind of back off for a minute and wait.
Yeah, I mean it's hard to get super excited. And it's new face, new place, going to John DeFilippo's offense, which I mean, to be fair, he's worked with John DeFilippo before. He used to be with the Eagles, so he's got some familiarity there. So that's great. So we can kind of know what to expect, but also he's going to an offense that has Leonard Fournette, north-south runner. They always said with Blake Bortles they wanted to run the ball first, second, and third down. They wanted to run every play and then throw. They're running to set up the pass, and the pass honestly wasn't happening very much. Nick Foles, we expect them to change that philosophy, probably to more of an even 50-50 split, but he's going from having really, upper echelon, really, great tight end, Alshon Jeffrey, variable of wide receivers that he's had over the years in Philadelphia, to D.D. Westbrook, Marquise Lee, DJ Shark. Like, these are the caliber of guys he's playing with. Now, we don't really know what these guys are because Blake Bortles was their quarterback, but I don't think any of us are expecting them to be any elite wide receivers in this league. None of them I think, are bona fide ones. I think it's a whole wide receiver core of 2s, and we're trying to see if one of them can kind of emerge as like a 1A with the distraction. Also, no real tight end here. They don't have a Zach Ertz there. Right now, they don't really have any household name. I mean, what's the number one? Jeff Swium, a guy from Dallas, is currently slated as their number one. You're not getting much value out of the tight ends. These are blocking tight ends that they have in Jacksonville. Right. So we'll see what happens. But for Nick Foles, he's a guy that I'm not investing very highly in. I think that you can expect a slight bump in production probably from Fournette and the wide receiver core because he's going to be a more accurate and consistent quarterback with than Blake Bortles was. And they're going to have to respect the passing game just a little bit more. So they're not going to stack the box as much against the run for Leonard Fournette, and obviously Leonard Fournette's a whole box of worms that we can get into about how the injuries, the off the field issues, all the headache that was Leonard Fournette last season. I had him dropped on my lap in our league of record last year, and I was not happy. I got him for way under value, way under what I expected him to go for, and turned out I overpaid for him. So that sucked. Yeah. But I mean, look. Go ahead.
I was going to mention one name that you mentioned that we were excited about last year as a rookie, and somebody that I think is going to take a step forward now with a quarterback like Nick Foles. I think DJ Chark is somebody that you got to keep your eye on as a sleeper. Somebody that, and we'll talk more about that as we get into our rankings and stuff like that. But
right.
This guy has got it all, and with Nick Foles being the quarterback, I think you have an opportunity to see him really shine. And real quick, I just wanted to mention somebody in the comments mentioned that Nick Foles was tied for the record with the great Peyton Manning. Yes, I should
That's
probably
fair.
mention that.
That's fair.
Tied with the great Peyton Manning. Yes,
That's
you're
true.
absolutely right
Yeah.
about that.
Well, the thing with Foles, though, I mean, this guy, he's bounced around the league, though. I mean, obviously, he was with the Eagles for 3 years, ended up being traded to the Rams, went to the Chiefs, back with the Eagles, won a Super Bowl, to be fair, as the backup, and never, obviously, Carson Wentz, they knew there's a future there. He's a hero in Philadelphia, and here he is no longer in Philadelphia. So, I mean, I don't think that, and people are looking at that as, like, how he's this great elite guy. In reality, he's got a lot of evidence pointing to the contrary. I think he's a good quarterback in this league. I don't think he's an elite guy. And over a full 16 games, which we've never seen in his career, I don't know that we can expect him to be necessarily anything like super high end. So
Better than Bortles, though?
I will take him over Bortles, at least for consistency. Bortles was not afraid to just chuck that ball. And, for Allen Robinson, that was great for a couple of years there. Yeah, the other team was great for the other team, too. So I guess the question is, where are you taking Nick Foles? Because for me, he's probably, if it's a two-quarterback league, if it's a two-quarterback league, I'll take him late rounds. If it's a single-quarterback league, I'm not touching him, but that's because I streamed the position. Like, I think he's probably one of the last quarterbacks off the board. I'm not investing draft capital in him, I'll put it that way.
You gotta see what we got in him. You got to see what we got in him.
But that's why I'm not investing draft capital in him. That's why that's what
I'm saying.
Go ahead. That's why I would stream him.
I'm agreeing with you. Yeah, I'm agreeing with you. I won't be. He's going to be a streamer. He's not going to be somebody that you take unless you take him in super late rounds and you haven't gotten a quarterback yet. And if you haven't, shame on you by the very last round. But yeah, I won't be taking Nick Foles probably at all in drafts.
No, I won't be. I think that you only see him going in drafts for like Jags fans and 2 quarterback leagues because so let me see. Right here in drafts right now. Yeah, he's currently going as the 24th quarterback off the board. So, yeah, he's not being drafted by me. He's going behind Derek Carr, which I think Derek Carr is going to climb, and ahead of Sam Darnold, Marcus Mariota, Andy Dalton, which they're pretty low in the drafts this year. That's interesting. Oh, interesting. 14th round. So yeah, that's
it's early.
It's early. That will work itself out. As there's a couple guys going ahead of them that I expect to drop, and I expect them to rise. And it'll like they're all going behind Josh Allen, for instance, right now. And I think Josh Allen should be probably behind most of them. So, all right, we'll get to that. All right, so Ryan Fitzpatrick, though, moving on, was with the Buccaneers, and we saw really good production when he was in, except for that the team couldn't commit to anything, and they kept bouncing between him and Jameis Winston. What are our thoughts with him now in Miami? I mean, we don't have to go super in depth on this because we did in the news section. But what are your thoughts? Ryan Fitzpatrick, his impact to the team, the players there. Where are you taking him in drafts, if at all? What are your thoughts on Ryan Fitzpatrick?
Oh gosh, I don't know. I mean, this is a wait and see thing because Miami like you already mentioned. Miami's not done. They're not done with this position. They have to go out. They got to get somebody else. This can't be their end game. So in my opinion, this is going to be the backup. I think he's going to end up being the backup there. I can't see them going into the season with Ryan Fitzpatrick as their starting quarterback. Now, if I'm wrong, and if he is going in as the starting quarterback, okay, he's not a horrible quarterback. I mean, he's already proven when he starts, he can be productive and he can be very, very good. And he's always surprising. Everybody always goes, it's Ryan Fitzpatrick. And then the guy ends up leading fantasy for like 5 weeks. Okay?
Magic.
Fitz magic happens, and if you're not on board, oh well, and he won some people in our league. He won some people some games,
He did.
And it was crazy watching what he was doing. He was so productive. So don't scoff too much at Ryan Fitzpatrick if he ends up starting. He's already proven he can do it. I just don't think it's going to happen. I think Miami's going to end up going out and getting somebody else.
See, for me, I agree. They're not done. They're bringing in somebody else. But based on who's out there right now, unless they make a big-time trade for a franchise guy, I don't think we're going to see somebody coming in over Fitzpatrick. I think they're going to either bring in one of these other guys for depth and probably bring in a rookie, or they're going to trade for like a Josh Rosen right now, one of these guys who are probably starters, but it's going to be a contested situation. They're going to trade up maybe and draft a rookie. I think no matter what they're going to do, somebody's sitting behind Fitzpatrick for at least the first half of the season, and then we'll see how things kind of shift from there. I think they brought in Fitzpatrick expecting him to be the short-term plug-and-play solution while they figure out that next logical step. Because again, Fitz magic, obviously, as we've known him. He's had a number of seasons where he gets you in the 3,000 yards range, 20-ish touchdowns. It's not like super high-end production, but I mean, look, go back to his year with the Jets. They got him a big contract back in 2015. We remember talking about that. 562 attempts, just under 4,000 yards, 31 touchdowns. I mean, that's not bad for a short-term answer with Ryan Fitzpatrick. Now, do I think he's going to get that done with a Jets offense with Chad O'Shea being the offensive coordinator, Devontae Parker and Kenny Stills as the number 1 and number 2 wide receiver, and I guess I can't really say anything. I'm actually a big Kenyon Drake fan. I think that he's a guy who's been shafted. I think he could be a really good running back in this league, but no tight end really. Mike Gesicki is their top tight end right now. Dwayne Allen are their options. I mean, maybe together they make for a decent tight end core. Actually, there's some upside in Gesicki, honestly, but I don't know if he has elite weapons around him. I go as far as to say that he doesn't, but short-term solution, I could see it. I think he'll be the starter. I can also tell you I'm not drafting him. I will not be touching Ryan Fitzpatrick unless it's a 2-quarterback league, and even then, he's probably going in that Nick Foles range for me. Maybe later. I don't know. I have to do all my rankings and see how I actually like everything, but I would say that Devontae Parker, Kenny Stills, they're not that much more desirable than D.D. Westbrook, Marquise Lee. So, or maybe some people make the argument that it's actually the opposite. So, because I've always been, we all know I've always been a Devontae Parker truther, despite his incredibly long and disappointing career, and not long career, long amount of workload, which has been underwhelming, I should say. So, that's Ryan Fitzpatrick. I expect him to be the starter, but they're not done. They're obviously not done. They're going to bring somebody else. All right, let's move to the running back position. Some bigger names. We'll start with a big fish. Le'Veon Bell was a Pittsburgh Steeler, sat out 2018. Now he is the starting running back for the New York Jets. Jason, what are your thoughts on Le'Veon Bell, now a starter for a new team, which honestly needs offensive line help and is not nearly the offense that the Pittsburgh Steelers were? What are his impacts for fantasy, the players around him, this team as a whole, and where are you taking him in fantasy drafts?
I am so concerned for Le'Veon Bell because I don't think he understood what he had in Pittsburgh. I don't think he understood that he wasn't just magical. He wasn't just able to get all these yards because he was so great. I don't think he understands that he has just gotten himself into a situation where he's gone from a very, very good offense to a not a very good offense. And he's going to find out. I think he's going to run into a brick wall. I think it's going to really, really take a toll on him. And it's going to be rough. I mean, this is a guy that didn't want to play because he wasn't getting what he wanted. This could be a situation where he doesn't want to play because he's on a really bad team. I'm concerned. So, as far as where am I taking him in drafts? Yeah, I would normally. I mean, it's Le'Veon Bell, so normally you'd be like, oh man, first round.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, he's going to obviously be the bell cow. He's obviously going to be the guy that's going to get the most touches and that kind of stuff. And he's probably the most talented guy on their football team right now. So they're going to try to get the ball into his hands all the time. The problem is you want to take guys on good teams, and he's not on one. So honestly, for me, I think Le'Veon Bell slips out of the first round, maybe out of the second round, probably talking top of the third round.
So on that instance, I disagree. I think that he's going to be a back of the first round type guy. I have him right now 9th, 10th, and this is with the assumption that he gets back in game shape, that he gets back and ready to go. But the offensive line is not what it was in Pittsburgh. The weapons.
You're making a lot more assumptions than just his his physical being.
Well, look, the bottom line is he's brought in to be the offense there. I mean, we obviously know that they have Sam Darnold, quarterback, a guy that you were very high on, and for good reasons, and probably will be a good quarterback in this league, upper echelon, probably with some years to develop. Robbie Anderson, Quincy Nunwa, Jameson Crowder they brought in. That's their wide receiver core. So they've got weapons, speedy guys who can really do things on the outside, guys that can move in the inside, speed. There's a lot of stuff they can do here. Tight ends, not really anything too exciting. They're probably going to be there to run block and to pass protect. So, look, that's going to help things like Le'Veon Bell, who I'm expecting Le'Veon Bell to get an astronomical workload. Look, in his last year with Pittsburgh, we said they ran him into the ground. He had over 300 rushing attempts, 85 receptions, over 400 total touches. I think he gets back to that level of usage. Now, whether his production is there, I would expect that to be a step back. But that's also why I'm not taking him as a top 3 pick in my draft. I think he's going to be a back of the first round pick, and I think that his talent and his ability and the workload, the floor based on his opportunity will get him a production level around there. So again, right now my initial rankings, I have him going probably as around my 9th, 10th pick, which is not that's probably like 7th running back off the board probably, and I'm comfortable with that. I have him going behind probably guys, obviously Todd Gurley, Saquon Barkley, Ezekiel Elliott, Alvin Kamara, Melvin Gordon, obviously, and then it gets a little interesting. Christian McCaffrey, who was great last year, but they're saying they want to back off his workload. I have him probably going in the same range as James Conner and David Johnson, honestly, and David Johnson I think could really outperform that. So it all depends on the offenses, as we've seen. Great running backs with great opportunity, they have that floor, but can they hit a ceiling without weapons around them? And we know what they have with the Jets, and they brought in a lot. They've upgraded the defense, they've got weapons there. Sam Darnold taking another step, hopefully in his sophomore year. It could work for him. So that's why for me, I think that Le'Veon Bell upgrades the Jets as a whole. He's going to make them very two-dimensional here. They're going to be able to run and pass, and he's a great pass catcher. You can't ever take him out because, like I said, his last season with the Steelers, 85 receptions, and that's not the first 80 reception season he's had. So pencil him in for at least 60 receptions, probably 280 to 300 rushing attempts, and probably that'll put him around 1,000 yards rushing, 600.
He's going to rush 1,000 yards behind that offensive line?
I think so. If he plays 16 games, I think so. Because remember, he's not a bruising back. He's a patient guy. He finds an opening, he explodes through that opening. He's got that patient running style, which we've seen many running backs try to emulate. None really truly successfully, and I think that if he's got he's in shape, he's got the offense down, and he waits for things to develop. Because I don't think that the Jets are done upgrading their offensive line either. They've been pursuing a couple of they've been pursuing guys, and so I think that once it's all said and done, they'll be at the very least a middle of the pack offensive line. I think with the workload, the talent, the opportunity, he's going to be a guy who will return on being a lower end RB1 with upside. So that's the way I see it, and obviously that upgrades the passing game. It helps Sam Darnold, it helps Quincy Nunwa, Robbie Anderson, Jameson Crowder to an extent, but I think that obviously Jameson Crowder is going to have a lot of his could be short touches vultured by Le'Veon Bell. So we'll see. But I'm a big fan of Bell. I don't think he's going to get Pittsburgh numbers, but I think he's going to get you low end RB1 numbers as a floor for me. So I'm looking at him again, back of the first. Maybe if people are really scared of him, you can get him early second. That's kind of the range I think he's going as of now.
I'd be looking for him in the second. I don't think I could spend it on a first unless they really do upgrade the offensive line, because with the current offensive line, I don't see him getting over 800 yards on. I just don't see it happening.
I mean, that's fair. Can't really argue that. All right, so let's move on. Next guy on this list, Mark Ingram, was with the New Orleans Saints, now with the Baltimore Ravens. He comes in, and we talked about this on Friday's show. He comes in, he's automatically the running back one. No doubt. He's coming in. He doesn't really have anybody to beat out there. Obviously, we talked about this a couple weeks ago now. Alex Collins, no longer with the team. He comes in and he's beating out Gus Edwards and Kenneth Dixon. Kenneth Dixon is, I think, a less proven, less efficient, and way more question marked version of Mark Ingram. So Mark Ingram comes in. He's going to be the number one in a run-heavy, run-first team. The problem, obviously, being that he's also sharing touches with quarterback Lamar Jackson. So, and I'm well on record for saying that this is a running back playing quarterback right now. So, look, until he can throw the ball consistently and efficiently, he's a wildcat running back playing quarterback. And that's not saying anything negative about him. It's just his play style. Read option. He runs the ball a lot. So I think it's going to be, at the end of the day, Lamar Jackson and Mark Ingram who are the rushing leaders for this team. And also the problem is they're just going to stack the box against these guys because there's no wide receivers in Baltimore. This is a team that has lost a lot of defensive talent. Obviously, they brought in Earl Thomas, which is great. But they've lost defensive leaders, defensive talent, and so the defense I expect to be, as of this point, as of this recording, they have regressed. They went from being top 3 across the board. They have taken a step backwards in 2019, bar what anybody says. Earl Thomas, a great addition. They've taken a step backwards. And they have no wide receivers in-house right now. And the top talent is already obviously signed. They didn't go after Antonio Brown or anything crazy. Odell Beckham Jr. went to the division rival Browns, and we'll talk about that a lot more next week. And we talked about it on Friday. We talked about it last Friday as well. So this is a team that really has no options on how to move the ball through the air. And a quarterback who's hesitant to do so. So they're going to run a lot. So he's going to have a lot of volume. But, they need, if they're going to do this, they need to further upgrade the offensive line. They need to bring in somebody to stretch the defense at least a little bit, so there's a little bit of room to run. And unfortunately, because of that, Mark Ingram is a guy that I can't see going as a running back 1. Despite the workload and opportunity, he is a running back 2, probably a mid-range running back 2 to maybe a higher end 2 because of the volume, but I don't know how often this team is going to be in scoring position, and I don't know how often he's not going to face stacked boxes. So that's me. What are your thoughts?
I'll take a step further from what you said. You said he walks in day 1, he's the starting running back. I think he walks in day 1, he's the offense.
Yeah.
I mean, you guys have got no receivers. You got no one to throw the football to. You do have that running quarterback that can make plays with his legs. But here's the ray of sunshine. Okay, I'll give you a ray of sunshine. Lamar Jackson can throw the football. Okay, he has not proven it yet, but he will. He can throw the football. He gets better every single time he throws the football, almost throw to throw. You watch his throwing motion, it gets better and better and better. And that's the one thing when he was coming out of the draft that was said over and over about him was that at that point when he was coming out of college, he threw the ball better than Michael Vick did at the same point in his career. So he can get to the point where he can put the ball down the field accurately on target if he's got some people to throw to. And there's the rub. He doesn't have anything to throw to.
Yep.
Okay, so the hope is that Baltimore stops having their vendetta against wide receivers, whatever the problem is they have against wide receivers. Get in there. In this draft, there are some very, very talented wide receivers coming into this draft. Okay, there's a Paris Campbell, there is DK Metcalf, there's the 2 different Browns that are out there. Grab 2 of these guys, you know what I mean, and start pushing those receivers out there. Then I'll be excited about Mark Ingram. As of right now, like you said, all they got to do is put a bunch of linebackers and linemen on the field. They don't even need a secondary at this point. They're just going to stack the box, and they're going to stop both of those 2 running backs, the one that gets the ball hiked to him and the one who gets the ball handed to him. So I completely agree with you. I cannot look at Mark Ingram as a 1 right now, although I'll say this. I am excited to see Mark Ingram in that uncontested number 1 spot.
Oh, yeah. No.
Finally gets that opportunity, and he's with your team, which is phenomenal. But again, get some more talent around him. It's going to be great. I think he's going to be very, very productive.
Look, the problem is that the Ravens have, this was under the Ozzie Newsome era, which it's not anymore. It's now Eric DaCosta. They've not been able to draft or develop wide receiver talent. They've brought in really good guys. Derek Mason, Anquan Bolden, Steve Smith Sr., like these guys that have been very good and played well for us over the years, even despite the fact that the quarterback was Joe Flacco. Flacco triple threat. Is he elite? No, he wasn't. But, who's to say that under the new regime with new guys in-house that they can't? I mean, if they go out and they get DK Metcalf, I'll be jumping for joy because, explosive outside guy, stretch the field, big body, can body guys out. He's good at jump balls. He's a red zone threat. I think he could be a great talent in this league. Will he be that in Baltimore? Time will tell if he even goes there, obviously. Could he be that in Baltimore should be the question. Depends on if Lamar Jackson gets better at playing the quarterback position. So, look, this is a team that needs a lot around him to make Mark Ingram work, because unfortunately his ceiling is capped based on, he's a high floor, low ceiling type guy because of the running quarterback, the fact that they like to use multiple backs, and the fact that there's no passing game. So Mark Ingram, as of right now, is a guy that, again, I'm taking him as a mid to higher end running back too, and that's I think, kind of his floor, but his ceiling for me right now is a high-end running back too. And I don't think I'm crazy for thinking that. So I guess I'll ask you, Jason, when would you take Mark Ingram? Because to me, a guy like that, that's a probably early 4th rounder. What?
It's harsh, but it's harsh but fair. I mean, early 4th rounder, late 3rd round. I think is the absolute ceiling. I couldn't see taking him any higher than that. But for me, mid to late 4th. I mean, it's sad but true.
Yeah. I don't know. Let me bring up where he's going right now. He's currently going as the 6th pick in the 4th round. So smack dab right in the 4th, 21st running back off the board. So later than I'm saying for me, because like he's going behind Devontae Freeman, Derrick Henry, Sony Michel, Marlon Mack. Well, Marlon Mack's gonna fall probably depending on moves that happen.
He'll fall.
But he's going ahead of guys like Chris Carson, Kerryon Johnson, James White. So that's multiple New England running backs there. That's going to end up diluting. Jerick McKinnon in San Francisco, that doesn't make a ton of... I don't know. We'll get to that. That's the next thing with Tevin Coleman. So, yeah, actually, we'll just move on. Let's move on to the next guy. Tevin Coleman, former Atlanta Falcons running back, now signed with the San Francisco 49ers, reunited with Kyle Shanahan. Could be an awesome addition. Obviously, an offensive coordinator who knows how to use him. Could be the featured guy, depending on what this team decides to do with Jerick McKinnon, a guy who we all said they overpaid last year, but also in that first year of his contract, they basically got rid of all the dead money. They can cut him and break even this year, and then they can cut him and save a ton of money as early as next season. So, Jason, what are your thoughts on Tevin Coleman? Because we can really power through these next 3 guys because they're all perceived backups for now. But Tevin Coleman, what do you expect out of him for the 49ers?
Yeah, honestly, I think I expect out of him what I've seen out of him in Atlanta. Same kind of thing. I think that he's going to be sort of a backup guy. He's a solid performer. Don't get me wrong. I mean, when he performs, he's got good, solid production, but he's not the kind of running back that they want in San Francisco to be their number 1 overall guy. So I definitely see him as sort of a backup guy.
Yeah.
Handcuff.
Yeah. Okay. So he was the backup to Devontae Freeman when he was with the Atlanta Falcons. But when he was there with Kyle Shanahan, both of them were viable options. We know that Kyle Shanahan likes to do a 2 running back system. He's got a good 1-2 punch, I think, now with Tevin Coleman and Jerick McKinnon. If we go back to those days with the Falcons, and we're going back a couple years now, we're looking at a guy who had, around 118 rushing attempts, 8 touchdowns rushing, 500 yards, and at the same time, 31 receptions, 421 yards to the air, and 3 receiving touchdowns. So good running back 2 production. We saw that was something that he was able to more or less maintain with the entire change of regime there, with Steve Sarkisian coming in with the Falcons. And unfortunately, last year he was given the full workload, and he had, honestly, his worst season in a while. He got the same average attempts per game, despite being the starter, yet his averages, for the most part, went down. His average yards per game actually went up, but his touchdowns nosedived. His receiving touchdowns went up. That's only because he got so much more volume. I mean, he did not show well, which, I mean, really deflated his asking price in the open market this year. So he goes to the 49ers. Offensive coordinator knows how to use him. A lot of people are saying, well, watch him become the day 1 starter. I think it's going to be a 1-2 punch. Because let's not forget, they also have oh, what am I blanking on his name?
That guy.
The other guy, the guy with the face and the hands and the Breida. Thank you, Matt Breida. Yeah. Matt Breida's there too. Matt Breida looked really good last season.
I'm so mad right now we didn't remember that guy's name.
I literally I was like, Breida, what's his first name? I should have just said Breida and kept going. But yeah, Matt Breida's there, Tevin Coleman, Jerick McKinnon. Breida's really more of a change of pace than both of these guys. So I don't know what the answer is. All I know is that it's very diluted. I don't think Coleman does anything to necessarily upgrade the offense as a whole, but I think he's a solid depth piece, and he's a guy that I'd be looking at middle rounds because Jerick McKinnon and Matt Breida both have a long history of not staying healthy. So just something worth mentioning. What about you? And where would you be looking for him?
Yeah, about the same. I don't see Tevin Coleman as anything other than a backup, a handcuff, somebody that I'll take just in case somebody gets hurt. Yeah, so late rounds.
All right. Frank Gore was a Miami Dolphin, now a Buffalo Bill, but he's backing up LaShawn McCoy. I think this is just completely a depth move. I would expect Frank Gore to be mostly only drafted if you're a LaShawn McCoy owner as a handcuff. He's a double-digit round type guy for me. Don't think he does anything to transform the offense. I think he's literally just a guy that comes in, he adds depth to the position, maybe a red zone bruiser because LaShawn McCoy is not exactly that, though LaShawn McCoy's been known to move a pile or two. So, again, I don't think I would be drafting him unless I'm a LaShawn McCoy owner. What say you, Jason?
This guy's the sledgehammer that you buy that you don't really need unless you have a really big project. He's awesome. I love me some Frank Gore, but he's also 3,000 years old, and he's going to be used on the goal line. When they get to the goal line and they need to get past the goal line, that's where they're going to use Frank Gore. He's going to be a battering ram. Yep. He's depth. I wouldn't draft this guy.
He's a red zone guy for me. That's the only way I see him getting very much, if any, use. And I just don't see a world where he's worth a fantasy draft pick unless you have LaShawn McCoy on your team and you want to have that insurance, because I expect him to come in and supplant Chris Ivory as the number 2. But even those guys are kind of interchangeable at this point in their career. So yeah, Frank Gore, I don't think he does anything to affect really the offense around him. He's not coming in as a starter. He's a backup. It's all as far as you need your handcuff to LaShawn McCoy, because LaShawn McCoy also does not play 16 games, at least not recently. And then Carlos Hyde, Jacksonville Jaguar, now a Kansas City Chief. What are your thoughts on this? We talked about this, probably like a week and a half ago now, talking about how I think this is mostly because, look, Damian Williams looked really good last year. He wasn't Kareem Hunt, but he was really good. But the thing is, he's never had more than 50 touches in a season, and I think that this is a depth move, a way to kind of, have a pretty decent backup, a guy with starting experience in this league that can come in, and if Damian Williams ends up, stuttering, gets injured, whatever the case may be, they've got a guy that they can lean on despite, their crazy passing offense. So, Carlos Hyde's, again, a guy I'm not drafting, probably unless I'm a Damian Williams owner, unless I really want to shoot for the upside here. Assume Williams doesn't work out. Carlos Hyde at least would give me a good floor. I think he's a flexible guy at that point, flex-worthy type player with running back 2 upside, but as long as Williams is in, I think Carlos Hyde is a guy that's not even really worth rostering. So, he's a double-digit round guy for me, unless I'm a Damian Williams owner, and then maybe 9th, 10th round. What say you?
Yeah, same for me. I think Carlos Hyde is a very, very poor man's somebody that can do all those things. He can catch the ball out of the backfield. He can run the ball. He's a slasher. He can run laterally. That's all great. But Damian Williams is clearly going to be the guy there. And unless Damian Williams gets hurt, Carlos Hyde is going to be depth.
Yeah, I agree. And then we had, I had as a bonus here, Kareem Hunt, Kansas City Chiefs, now Cleveland Brown. But we covered this in the news, talking about how he is suspended for 8 games. When he comes back, he's going to have to work his way into the offense, though we expect him to be given a workload right off the bat. I think when he comes back, he's going to see like 7 touches a game, honestly. And I think it's going to work into probably more of a 50-50 split. Kareem Hunt, a little bit more of the outside pass-catching type guy. Nick Chubb, more of that north-south guy that can catch the ball. But I think both of these guys are interchangeable. They're both really, really good. They're both, if they were on separate teams, RB1s in this league, and because of that, they're going to cannibalize each other, and that's why it's tough to buy into one of the to Kareem Hunt, honestly, because he's going to have to earn starting snaps from Chubb, and I think that they brought Hunt in as a way as an option to trade later in the season once he's through the suspension, because he'll have value and they'll have eaten the bad press, and some other team might be more willing to take a shot at bringing in a guy like that who could be, a season saver for a playoff contender maybe, or maybe they're just hoping to have him on the cheap, and then they can move him in a future year. Because I think that this is a team that is behind Nick Chubb. But Kareem Hunt does some things that Chubb doesn't do, and vice versa. So, but they're both number 1 running backs on the same team. That's bad for fantasy. Probably good for the Browns. Bad for fantasy. So again, I'm not really touching Hunt, because you're gonna have to wait until the 9th week of the fantasy season to even remotely put him in a starting lineup, because he's not going to see touches until then. And even then, I wouldn't be starting him right away, because he's got to earn playing time. So he's a guy that, unless I'm in deeper leagues, extended benches, unless I'm in a league that has a reserve spot that I can throw him into with a suspension, I'm probably not touching unless I'm a Nick Chubb owner and I want to have that handcuff in case Chubb goes down. What say you, Jason?
Yeah, same. I really, really like Nick Chubb. I've liked Nick Chubb since he came out of the draft. I thought that he should immediately have been the number 1 running back for this team. And I think he's going to be the guy, like you said. They drafted him to be their guy. And I think that it was smart to go get Kareem Hunt because they're going to be able to trade him. They're going to be able to get some really nice value for him.
Yep.
He's going to go change the fortunes of some franchise somewhere, and then they're going to have Nick Chubb to rely on, plus whatever piece they get for Kareem Hunt. So fantasy-wise, yeah, it's hands off. Unless you get both of these guys at the same time, it's not a good move.
Yeah, it's things could go better. All right, so with all that being said, that's it for us today. So make sure you guys tune in on Friday when we're going to be doing the exact same thing, talking about the free agent fantasy impacts, but it'll be part 2. We're going to go through the wide receivers, the tight ends. Of course, we'll bring you the top headlines from around the league, all the signings that are sure to happen between now and then. If you guys want to follow the show, make sure you follow us on Twitter at the FF Fanatics. We're here every Tuesday and Friday. We are now live on Twitch, as we've been talking about right here. If you're listening to us here, description to where to find it will be in the description down below. Jason, any parting thoughts?
No, not very much. Guys, thanks for having us here live. It's the first time I've done a live show, and it was a lot of fun. I think it went pretty well. What do you think?
Oh, I think it was a lot of fun, and we'll stick around probably and answer some questions. So again, if people want to ask questions, Twitch is a good way to do that live. So, all right, we're out of here. Everybody take care. Have a great week. We will see you on Friday. Bye, guys.